Hi, my name is Tom Pelton. I'm the Director of Communications at the Environmental Integrity Project. Today we're having a webinar to explain our Oil and Gas Watch database and news service and some recent improvements and upgrades we've made that allows better searches, more public records, and more kind of alerts to new projects going on in the oil and gas world and their environmental impacts. We're going to have two speakers today. Courtney Bernhardt, our Director of Research, and Brendan Gibbons, our Oil and Gas Watch writer and editor. And after we give these presentations, we will open it up to questions from anyone who wants to ask a question. If you have a question, go ahead and put a note in chat that you have a question. I'll then call on you and I'll unmute you and you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question yourself during our question and answer session. So first we'll start off. Courtney, why don't you go ahead?
Great. Thanks, Tom. And thank you for everybody who's taken the time to tune in today. I'm going to give a tour of our new Oil and Gas Watch website, and then Brendan will follow with more information about the new service. So I am sharing my screen, which is what people say on webinars, right? So this is our new Oil and Gas Watch landing page. So at the very top, you'll find traditional navigation tools. You'll be able to find our list of alerts, a link out to the news site, more information about Oil and Gas Watch, what we're tracking and what we're not tracking, as well as additional resources, including a glossary of frequently asked questions page and a link to where you can find downloadable data in a spreadsheet. That information in the downloads is updated every weekday and reflects our latest information. Also at the top, you'll find a link to where you can search the database, and I'll show you how to do that, how to do those searches in a few moments. Before we scroll down, I wanted to preview a few new features of the website. One is additional roll-up information about what we're tracking and potential environmental impacts. Here it shows that we're tracking 615 oil, gas, and petrochemical industry projects that have been built since 2012. Another 659 are planned and are not yet built. And those not yet built projects can or have the potential to emit over 185 million tons of greenhouse gases every year. We've also added some quick access buttons to where you can go to find summary information about a particular industry or projects by their construction status, like proposed, those that are canceled, those that might be under construction, as well as any that have a pending permit approval. So that includes facilities that have pending permit applications or draft permits. Below that, you'll find a map. This is similar to our old version of the website, but a map of all the facilities that we're tracking. And pipelines that we're tracking. So if you zoom out, you can see that there are a few in Alaska and some in Puerto Rico. The dots are facilities and the lines are pipelines. You can also filter this map by using the filters below. You can search by state. Say you just want to look in Texas. And if you want to further narrow your search to just Harris County, that's around Houston, you can search that way. You can clear your search by deleting your keyword and going back to all and hitting search. You can click any of the dots on this map to take you to a detailed facility page for a project or for a facility or a pipeline. There are other ways to get at facility and pipeline pages as well. I'll show you. So below that, we have information about our Oil and Gas Watch news articles. There's a link over to the news page, as well as an excerpt from the most recent article that we've published. And then we launched this new feature called Oil and Gas Watch Alerts. And this section previews the most recent 10 alerts about construction updates, new applications submitted, open comment periods on permits, whether or not a new project has been announced, and public meetings or public hearings. If you click this button, it'll take you to a summary page that maps all the facilities or pipelines with active alerts and lets you view and search and filter these different alerts. Clicking on one will take you to a summary page that you can copy and share out on social media or send through email, however you wish. We provide a brief description of what we're alerting you to, as well as a link out to the detailed pipeline page. If we have information about the location of a facility or pipeline, we'll map it here and provide additional information below, including the length of a pipeline, how large it is, how much additional capacity it will add, when construction started, and then provide links to documents or primary source documents below. So Oil and Gas Watch is based
If I could
on-
just add real quick there, we also provide often links to how you can comment. For example, if there's a major new pipeline proposed near you or a major new project, how to comment, the email, the address, that information. So any attorneys out there or environmental groups, if you want to find ways to weigh in on projects in your backyard, we provide those primary documents and avenues for comment.
So the information we provide will vary depending on the type of alert. And we invite you to explore this page. We have a button at the top and the bottom, and there's one on the landing page as well. And you should be able to get to all of the active alerts for a particular facility or pipeline from the facilities pipeline page. I'd like to show you now how, what is included on one of these industry summary pages. So this is the one for ammonia and synthetic fertilizers. At the top, we provide a summary of how many projects at how many facilities. And you'll notice this throughout the Oil and Gas Watch website, but we refer to projects, facilities, and pipelines. Projects are typically located at facilities. So one facility may have multiple expansion projects. The first project is, if it's a brand new facility, will be the initial construction of that facility. And also at the top, we'll let you know how many of those facilities have an active alert. At the top, we include some summary information about how many new facilities have been built since 2012, how many have been expanded, how many are proposed and not yet built, and how many expansions are proposed and not yet built. We also include information about how many projects have received final Clean Air Act new source review construction permits, and those permits authorize construction, so we're highlighting them here, and how many have received permits but haven't yet been built. Below that, we summarize potential carbon dioxide emissions or greenhouse gas emissions in carbon dioxide equivalents, and put those into context using some general comparison values. And before I get into the comparison values, I just want to remind folks that the emission data that we're showing on Oil and Gas Watch comes from permit documents or other environmental approval documents that these companies have to obtain. Because these projects aren't yet built, they're not yet reporting their emissions to EPA or state agencies. And in those situations, the best source of potential impacts or air emissions come from permit disclosures. And what we're showing here are technically called potential to emit. It's a regulatory term that EPA uses to describe the highest emissions that could come from a plant after installing federally required pollution controls. So for this group of ammonia and synthetic fertilizer plants and projects, we're looking at a potential to increase emissions by over 35.4 million tons, or 35.4 million tons per year. And that's the equivalent of about 8.5 new coal-fired power plants operating around the clock, about 7.1 million gas-powered vehicles added and driven for a year, And it's also the equivalent of about $6 billion in additional climate-related social costs, according to EPA's social cost of carbon metric of $190 per metric ton of greenhouse gases. And we also provide this kind of morbid metric here, but the additional climate-related deaths associated with the carbon emissions. And this more information about these metrics can be found in our glossary and frequently asked questions pages. We link directly to the reports and peer-reviewed articles that we pull these equivalencies from.
Those climate-related deaths are also according to EPA's formula.
Oh no, the climate-related deaths are actually from a peer-reviewed article. It's not.
Okay.
Below that, we show a map of all the all of the ammonia or synthetic fertilizer plants that we're tracking. You can use this map just like the one on the landing page. You can click on it to get to a facility page, or you can use the table below. And the table shows the location of a plant and the number of projects that have been proposed for that facility since 2012. You can also hop over to a summary of alerts that pertain to the group of facilities that you're looking at. So that's a summary collection. And now I'd like to show you how to find information about a specific facility. And then we'll look at the facility page for that one. We're searching the database. It takes a little minute. It takes a minute to load. But so this is our search page. It shows a map of all the facilities and has filters on the left. And there's a summary of your results at the bottom. If you'd like to create a summary page like the one we just looked at based on your search results, you can click this link here and it will generate a page for you. You can save your search results, or you can bookmark them by just copying the URL after you enter your search criteria, or you can also copy and share the link to the page that's generated with the summary. So I'd like to start by searching for a Formosa plant. So you can type in, just start typing what you're interested in here. But I'm specifically looking for this Formosa point cover plant. This is a plastics plant on the Gulf Coast of Texas. And it'll zoom in on the facility and then provide you with a link to it below. So I'll show you what this facility page looks like, and then we'll go back and do a few more refined searches to show you what you can do. So on a facility page, we provide some basic information up top, the name of the plant, the company behind it, its street address, and the county where it's located. For facilities that are already operating, we provide a link to EPA's detailed facility report, and these are reports created by EPA in its enforcement and compliance history online database. And going there will, I'm not going to give you a detailed tour of ECHO right now, but I'll just let you know what you can find over here that might be relevant to what you may be interested in. But you can find information about the plant's recent compliance history, as well as links out to actual air emission reports and Clean Water Act discharges. There's a lot of information in these ECHO pages, so we just wanted to provide a link to where people can go find out more. So we also provide a description of what the plant makes and in certain circumstances, how much of each product that they make. Over on the right hand side of a facility page, if there's an active alert, those alerts will show up on the top right. And for facilities where we have detailed enough location information, we provide a summary of demographic and environmental burden indicators. And all of this information comes from the Environmental Protection Agency's EJ screen reports. We also provide a link to those reports at the bottom of this box. And you can feel free to reach out to us. We do have a lot more detailed information on file. Among these, we also provide indicators of when values are over the national average. So for example, 53% of the 458 people who live within 3 miles of this Formosa Point Comfort plant are people of color. And 7% are under 5 years old, and both of those are over the national average. We also flag cancer risk from EPA's EJ Screen tool, and they pull the information in from EPA's tox screening database. And this means the cancer risk is 30 per 1 million people, or 1 million people. For those who are on here who are a little more technical, we also provide identification numbers. One to EPA's ECHO system. They use this Facility Registration System ID, or FRS ID. There's a Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program ID that you can use to search for specific facilities in that database. We also provide state facility ID numbers that can be very useful for finding enforcement records or other permit records through specific agency databases. For example, this one is an ID number used by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and you can use that for a variety of searches on their website. We also provide industry code identifiers, so NAICS and SIC codes. And back to the center of the page, we also roll up the potential emission increases from new construction or other expansions at the site, and put them into context, similar to how we do on the summary pages. Below that, we show a map of the facility and nearby facilities, as well as associated facilities. So for this plant, we don't have any associated facilities, but associated facilities and pipelines in Oil and Gas Watch refer to facilities or pipelines that are directly connected to the plant that you're visiting here. So say there was a pipeline that fed this, a new pipeline that fed this plant, we would show that linkage here. Below the map, we list all the projects that we're tracking at a site. So you can filter them. This one has 10 projects since 2012. There are quite a few. So you can filter to just see the ones that are proposed. You can also filter by project type. So say you just want no proposed ethylene crackers, but say you just want an ethylene cracker. So you can filter by type. In each of these project accordions, you can pop open the potential emission increases from that specific project, as well as view additional information about actual or expected operating year or the project cost where we have that information. At the very bottom of the page of these facility pages, we list information about the permits that we're tracking. Some of these facilities, like this Formosa Point Comfort plant, can be very complicated, and they have to receive multiple permits for multiple reasons for multiple different units at their plant. We've categorized permits by the environmental law that they're issued under, so either Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, or other. On some facility pages, you may see other types of permits like Natural Gas Act or Deep Water Ports Act, and those will show up where they're relevant. We also list the permit type. So if you're interested in air construction permits, those are those new source review permits, or air operating permits. Those are the ones that authorize the operation of the plant. For Clean Water Act, for this plant, we're tracking a wastewater discharge permit or an MPDES permit or a TPDES permit in the case of Texas. So you can also search by permit status. So you can look for all the ones with pending applications or the ones that have a draft permit. You can also search or filter based on what project they're connected to. It's particularly helpful if you have a facility like this that has multiple permits that have been issued over time.
And then you can click on the buttons and get the actual document itself, the real public record.
Yeah, so if you expand one of these, you can learn more about what the permit authorizes, when the company initially applied for it, when they received the permit, the projects it's connected to, and access documents or the key documents for that approval. In our database, we try our best to have a copy of the complete permit application, the final permit, and any sort of technical evaluation that a state agency or issuing agency has prepared that lays out the justification for the terms of the permit. For draft permits, we'll also include a draft permit. And if you have trouble finding any particular records of interest, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to point you to where the information comes from or where you can find additional information. So that is a facility page. I can show you a pipeline page now. So this is, you can get to those through maps, or you can find them through the search as well. So this is a pipeline page, just slightly different than what you see for a facility page, but also very similar in some ways. So we have a description of the pipeline up top. We'll flag what type of product it's carrying. This is a crude oil pipeline. It's a new pipeline, not an expansion, and it's proposed. So it's not yet under construction and it's not yet built. We'll list the length of the pipeline, how how wide it is or the diameter, the additional capacity it would add, and the year it was expected to be in service. This one's not yet operating. We also have links to records that may be helpful. For pipelines that run through wetlands, we will quantify the wetland impacts if we can find that information. We'll show a map of the pipeline if we have that information, and we'll also show the associated facilities and other pipelines that may be connected to it. In this instance, there's an associated pipeline, the Seahawk Crude Condensate Terminal. And this other dot is the Point Comfort plant that we just looked at.
Do we include carbon pipelines in this pipeline database?
Yes, we're starting to see a lot more carbon dioxide pipelines proposed. So we've started mapping and tracking those where they're relevant. So beneath the map, we also provide links to specific associated facilities and pipelines. And then for this particular pipeline, we're not tracking any permits, so there would be permit information at the bottom, similar to what you'd see on a facility page, except you'd see pipeline approvals, not Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act approvals. And now I'd like to show you how to search the database. It takes a moment to load, but here we go. So I did show you how to search for a specific facility or pipeline just by name. On the landing page, I showed you that you can search by state. So we'll start by searching in Texas, going all the way to the bottom here. So here are all the facilities that are in Texas or run through Texas in the case of pipelines. Say you're only interested in ammonia or fertilizer projects in Texas, and then also those that are proposed, like the ones that haven't been built yet. This will give you that list. And say you want to take it one step further and look for ones that have a pending permit opportunity. So you can search you can refine it further by searching by permit type, or you can just go straight to permit status and say, I just want all the ones with any sort of pending permit application. So these are the 4 ammonia or fertilizer plants in Texas that have a pending permit application. You can refine it further by narrowing it to air construction, or you can add multiple permit types in here. So, and again, you can export these pages or bookmark them. And I think that concludes you can also search for pipelines, similar to how you search for a particular facility or project. I think that
Courtney, one question that we get often, I think people may want to know, is what facilities are not included on this database and the sort of time range. Like, for example, we don't include oil and gas wells or gathering pipelines that go from the well to a bigger pipeline.
Right. So we aren't tracking every single thing related to oil and gas in the United States. We're mainly tracking what industry and regulators call midstream and downstream infrastructure. On our About page, we have this detailed table of the project types that fit within specific industry sectors that we are tracking. So for example, for natural gas, we're tracking gas processing plants, pipelines, compressor stations, liquefied natural gas export terminals, storage facilities. But you'll notice that we're not listing on here every gas well or every gas gathering line. And we know that those are a very big deal in many communities, but there are so many of them that our team of 7 people probably would not be able to track them very well. So we'd be more than happy to point you to where you might be able to find more information about those sources if you reach out to us.
One thing our site is useful for is, let's say you're a journalist and you're covering, say, the LNG industry. We have a very good up-to-date summary of how many LNG export terminals have been built over the last 12 years, how many more are proposed. If you want to find out how many of them are expanding, what the status of those expansions are, if you're covering that industry, we have a great summary of those types of things. Also, let's say you're covering the fertilizer industry. We summarize that industry, how much has been built, how much is proposed, major pipelines, those kind of large downstream sectors. And the big picture here is, why do we provide all this information? Why are we tracking this? I mean, there's been an enormous growth in not only oil and gas drilling, but all the downstream industries associated, the plastics industry, the chemical industry, that is booming because of the fracking boom that started about 15 years ago. So we want to provide the documents to provide transparency, accountability, factual data on this rapidly growing industry. And also, if you're a local community member, you want to find out what's proposed in your backyard. And we will tell you as soon as we find out if there's a public hearing coming up or a public comment period on a major expansion that might impact your community. This is the place you can go to be alerted to that. Brendan Gibbons is the editor of our Oil and Gas Watch News, and he's going to talk about the reporting we do in our newsletter to help summarize this information and get it out to the public. Go ahead, Brendan.
Has everyone seen this Oil and Gas Watch News homepage? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Brendan Gibbons, oil and gas writer and editor for EIP, and sort of the main caretaker of this Oil and Gas Watch News site. Environmental Integrity Project launched this site in July of 2022 to offer more background and context for some of the real impacts and, in many cases, the real human impacts of the facilities and the pollution they emit that we talked about in the database. And we also cover big trend stories about, the new LNG expansion, a wave of new ammonia and fertilizer plants that might be coming because of very cheap natural gas. But even sometimes zooming in on very specific refineries or chemical plants that have extremely high emissions and doing a local article about them, and often in areas where there isn't much news coverage. People call them news deserts. So under the redesign, we really matched a lot of the navigation and the branding to the Oil and Gas Watch database. So they have pretty much the same menu bar up here at the top. And this link will take you back to the database, and you can go to the alerts page there. It's the same about page, and then same with the glossary, frequently asked questions, and downloads. Up here is our subscribe button to subscribe to our Oil and Gas Watch newsletter, which I'll show you and talk a bit more about in a minute. You can also subscribe to that newsletter, which is delivered once a week here at the bottom of the homepage. Those are the 2 best ways to sign up. And we really encourage you all to do it so that you'll get a lot of these alerts and some of the articles and briefs I'm about to show you in your inbox every week. As I said, each week we publish a larger article, can cover a variety of different topics. Would love to hear from you all, frequent users of our site, and people who follow this stuff quite a bit, about any article or story ideas you have for us. We're definitely open. So this is this week's or last week's main article. We'll publish a new one tomorrow. As part of the redesign, we're taking some of those most impactful, most newsworthy alerts and turning them into news briefs, which have a little bit more context and background than we're able to cram into an alert. So in this case, we're talking about a new chemical plant proposed in Matagorda County, Texas, that would produce methyl methacrylate material used in plexiglass and would have pretty huge amounts of pollution associated with that plant. Here's one about companies drilling new test wells for carbon storage in Southeast Louisiana, and then a gas pipeline expansion in Pennsylvania and New Jersey that began operating earlier this month. Click on the brief page and it just takes you to some of the links that are also included in the on the alerts, but we always try to include a link to the facility page for each facility that we write a brief about. So really trying to solidify those connections between the database and the news site. Going back here, you can see more briefs by expanding this page, and they're all of our past briefs are linked here. Link back to the database again. Past news articles will display the most recent 4, but you can look at all of them here just by clicking on see more articles. These are links to in-depth reports produced by the staff of the Environmental Integrity Project. So oftentimes we'll write a news article summarizing the main conclusions and key points from those reports. But if you want to go deeper, you can go and see the full research that we've done. These take months to produce and involve, sometimes a dozen staff members working and editing on these reports. And so there's tons of good information in there about some of the biggest topics in midstream and downstream oil and gas in the US. You can search our articles by tags here at this bottom section. So if you want to find out everything we've written about air quality, just click on that tab. You'll see the articles here. Same for all these other categories. And again, there's our sign up link, links to our social pages at the bottom where we post all of the briefs and links to articles every week. Trying to put that directly in social media feeds where people are and not necessarily requiring that they go back to the site to see them. And then the last thing is, a similar search function that you can use up here. Here's a prior search I did looking for, let's just do actually Texas plastics. And then you'll get all the articles that were associated with plastics plants in Texas or mention them at least. So again, really encourage y'all to subscribe. Oh, I will show you what the Oil and Gas Watch newsletter will look like in your inbox. And again, this comes out once a week and has a link to our top story of the week, as well as our news briefs. And then for some of those alerts that have a very specific action timeline, either it's a public meeting or a comment period that's due, we like to put those here so that people can know that they're coming up and start preparing for them. We try to do that the week that we issue the alert so that you have that information as quickly as possible. Include a couple of links to other mainstream media coverage of different topics we find interesting and are related to what we cover. And then we always end with a stat of the week. I'm always looking for infographics that explain some, not well understood aspect of oil and gas. And a lot of them come from the Energy Information Administration, which I'm sure y'all use frequently.
All right. Thanks very much, Brendan. And, part of the point of our Oil and Gas Watch news service is that, the Wall Street Journal, Reuters, other news services are constantly reporting on the oil and gas industry, but they don't usually talk about, for example, the greenhouse gas impact of each project, the air pollution from each project, the wetlands impact for each project, what is the population around each project, and what's the environmental justice ramifications of that project in terms of how many people of color are around a project, how many people of lower income are around the project. So we provide a lot more kind of the environmental impact of all these different small projects and also whole growth sectors to give you a sense of what is the global impact of the expansion of LNG, for example, in terms of greenhouse gas. We'll go into that on our website and we keep adjusting that as more and more projects are proposed. And we also, we'll often take we'll see a hearing or a notice that's posted. And for example, Brendan did a story about a 800-mile pipeline which is proposed across Texas and Louisiana, and we wrote a whole report on it that people didn't really know about yet. It was technically a public hearing was set for it, but it hadn't really been reported on yet. So we did a whole Oil and Gas Watch news article about it and the thousands of properties it could impact. So it kind of provides some new information about unexplained ramifications of the oil and gas expansion nationally. All right, now we're going to go to questions from anyone who wants to ask questions. And if you have a question, put a note in the Q&A or in the chat. And what I'm going to do is I am going to then call on you and unmute you, and you can ask your questions yourself. So first of all, I'm going to go to Ginger Kowal. Let's find Ginger. And I'm clicking to unmute you. And Ginger, see if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much. Well, I put a couple of questions in, but
Go ahead. Go through them.
Okay, the first one is about the emissions estimate shown that Courtney walked us through, and my question was just about making sure that that only reflects those projects or facilities where the permit includes emissions information and therefore could be kind of a small subset. Is that true? I assume there's no like extrapolation or estimation of emissions for, yeah.
We're not estimating, and I think you summarize it really well. Where we don't have information, we don't guess. So I think it would be fair to say that a lot of the emission totals maybe are likely underestimates of the total potential emissions.
Okay.
There are two situations where we don't have emission information. One is a facility hasn't applied yet, and the second is for a facility that's considered a minor source. And minor sources under new source review don't have to quantify their greenhouse gas emissions in their permit applications, and their permits don't have to regulate greenhouse gases. We have a lot more information about that in the glossary and FAQ section if you want more detailed info.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ginger, go ahead. If you have other questions, go ahead and ask them.
Great. Yeah, just one more about getting the data. So this again, Courtney, you mentioned this, that there's a button where you can generate a page that summarizes selected projects using the filters, but is there an option to download the selected projects?
Not at this time. That's something we're still working on. In the meantime, we've got a download button where you can go and download the entire database, or at least excerpts of the entire database, and that is available in a Google Sheet. So, and we update that every weekday, and you can
filter that if you need. You can filter that by industry.
Yeah, you can apply filters and use it like any other spreadsheet.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have a question from Mark Olald, and I'm going to hit allow to talk. Mark, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for the presentation. Yeah, two questions. The first you started to answer, but specifically on carbon capture and sequestration, I'm interested in that topic, but spanning not just CCS as it relates to oil and gas, but also just kind of more in general. Could you talk a little bit more about your source of data on the carbon capture information so I can get a better sense of kind of where's the cutoff of what types of projects and facility information would be in your data versus, I would need to go find elsewhere?
Yeah, so you're right. We're not tracking everything related to carbon capture. We're tracking carbon capture related to oil, gas, and petrochemicals. In some cases, those projects may also touch on related industries or pipelines that may convey carbon dioxide from ethanol plants, fertilizer plants, and a whole bunch of carbon sources upstream. I think so. Our sources mainly come from public announcements. So if a company has committed to capture carbon, if there is some sort of a carbon capture hub that's been proposed, we typically have most of those in our database. We'll also look at state state approvals. For instance, Louisiana Department of Energy and Natural Resources is now issuing what we call Class 6 carbon dioxide injection permits for underground injection wells. So we'll monitor their website to see if there are any new applications submitted and what facilities those may be connected to. That agency also issues wetland permits or coastal use permits for pipelines and other infrastructure that may impact wetlands in the coastal zone of Louisiana. So we'll also check their coastal use permit approvals and applications to see what's happening there. That's just one example of using state agency websites as a source of information, but we also look at EPA's Class 6 website. They have a lot of detailed information online, although they do redact quite a lot of information about each sequestration well. And right now, carbon dioxide pipelines are not regulated by any federal entity, or at least the siting of them isn't regulated by a federal entity. The safety, you could argue that PHMSA is regulating that, and I know they have proposed regulations in the works, but the location information about carbon pipelines comes from a variety of sources, from company maps that they post online to actual registrations and approvals they have to get from a variety of agencies. I think a good source you could turn to for all carbon capture projects in the U.S. might be Clean Air Task Force. I know they maintain a website of pending or recently built carbon capture projects that span industries outside of what we're tracking in Oil and Gas Watch.
Great, thanks so much. And I just have one other.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask your question. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the financials of some of this. I saw the top story on your kind of news side of this. Talked about subsidies in Texas, and I was wondering if your project scrapes any kind of facility level, project level, et cetera, data on subsidies, public funding, tax breaks, that sort of thing, or is that something that there even is a way to standardize?
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really a pretty way to standardize it. We try in states where they publish that information and make it readily available, like in Texas and Louisiana. They tend to do a better job than some other states, but so for the Formosa Point Comfort plant that I showed you, there were several tax abatement agreements that that Formosa had entered into with the local school districts. So you'll find some information about that on the facility pages where we have that information.
We did a whole report recently that looked at all of the plastics plants in the U.S. and how much public subsidies were provided for those plants, and then their environmental records. A lot of them have been breaking the law after getting huge public subsidies. So we did that analysis. It's a national analysis, and you can find that report, Feeding the Plastics Industrial Complex, on our website. That in it is a database. You can click through that report. We have a place you can get our spreadsheet of exactly how much in public subsidies were provided for every plastics manufacturing plant in the U.S., billions and billions of dollars. But then, as Courtney notes, on some of these individual facility pages, you can also click and find the tax break that the local school district gave to the plant, et cetera.
Or that they're applying for. Yeah.
Or they're applying for, right.
Great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your work.
All right. Next, Joya Kennedy. I'm clicking the button to allow you to talk. Go ahead, unmute yourself, Joya.
Hi, thanks. I think Courtney already answered my question. I was wondering how to download the data. I found it, so thank you.
Great. Okay, I have a question here from Anonymous. And Anonymous asks, is this data we're presenting using the new version of EJ Screen? We provide demographic data about the breakdowns of the populations around plants. Is this the new version of EJ Screen? The values are displayed in percent here, but EJ Screen is in percentiles. What does the percent mean?
Okay, so yes, we are using the new version of EJ Screen. EJ Screen or EPA updates EJ Screen every year and a half or so. It just depends on what's going on at EPA, but we pull the data directly from the EJ Screen API, which is a database that we automate those updates through that API system. Your question about percents versus percentiles, the percents are literally the percent of people within 3 miles that meet the description that we're providing. So, 47% of the 300 some people are people of color, according to EPA's estimate. EJ Screen also provides information in percentiles, so that means that they're ranking the facility or that particular area against the rest of the country. So if the facility is in the 80th percentile for people of color, that means that it's got a higher percentage of people of color than 80% of the rest of the country or similar areas. We have that information on file and we'd be more than happy to provide it in spreadsheet form. We just had to make a decision about what to flag on the front end of the website and what most people would find understandable. And after some testing of a variety of audiences, we found that just a percent is simplest, because a lot of people don't understand what a percentile is. But I think you're also getting at like what are the national averages, and we do have that information on file too. I think for people of color it's about 40%, and for low income it's 30%, and that'll change from year to year depending on EPA's data set.
Anonymous also asks, will you be including carbon pipelines? I think the answer to that is yes. Carbon pipelines for oil and gas related industries.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Anonymous wants to know, could you please mention where you obtain your pipeline data?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of pipelines digitized. We have someone on staff who gets that information from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC filings. They get them from like public websites or public maps that companies post. We may get them also from state databases. So the Texas Railroad Commission has a database of all the pipelines in Texas, including those that are proposed. So we'll go there. In Louisiana, the Louisiana Department of Energy and Natural Resources also has an online database where you can find pipeline routes that companies submit in order to obtain coastal use permits. There are a large number of pipelines in our database that we obtain through a close collaboration with Frac Tracker and Healthy Gulf. So some of our information was built in partnership with those organizations, who are also tremendous resources that you can turn to for information about gas wells and other very mostly local issues along the Gulf Coast, as well as the Appalachian Basin.
Great. We have a question here from Shannon Smith. Shannon, I'm pressing the allow to talk button. Go ahead and unmute yourself, ask your question. Smith, can you unmute yourself? Oh, Shannon Smith, her comment was Frac Tracker tracks national oil and gas wells for those looking for more information. So go to Frac Tracker. They're our partners and our friends, and they do great data collection on the wells part of it. We're more downstream, the pipelines, the refineries, the plastic manufacturing plants, the processing plants, the LNG terminals, the oil export terminals, that's kind of stuff that we document. Frac Tracker does a great job with the wells themselves. Okay.
Yeah, they're also a good resource for really in-depth facility level analyses. I know they've published quite a few. So anyway, I think Shannon Smith might be a good contact to reach out to if you're looking for that kind of info.
Great. Any other questions? Any other questions or thoughts from our audience? Okay, well, a couple things. Number one, reach out to us anytime. There's an email address on the Oil and Gas Watch website. You can also reach out to me anytime, Tom Pelton, tpelton@environmentalintegrity.org, or Courtney Bernhardt, CBERNHARDT, at environmentalintegrity.org for news-related tips, ideas. Brendan Gibbons, B. Gibbons, at environmentalintegrity.org. We'd love to get your ideas. Let's say you see something that's going on in your state or your backyard. You want us to investigate it and do a story on it. Let us know. We'd love to get your tips and ideas. Also, subscribe to our newsletter. Every week, we spend a lot of time, a large number of us here who really try hard to do innovative, groundbreaking articles on the oil and gas industry. Subscribe to the newsletter, and then let us know how we can do better. If you see something you'd like to see in a newsletter, what do you think we should be covering? What topics you think we should tackle? Let us know. Give us some feedback. Send us an email, and we're always looking to improve the newsletter. So thank you, everyone, for spending time with us today, and thank you for your interest in Oil and Gas Watch. We hope you have a great afternoon. And if you have any more, we have one more question. This came in here. Yes, Samantha Liskow asks, will this tape recording be available? Yes, we're videotaping this whole webinar, and we're going to post on our website, so you can go back and refer to it later on or share it as kind of an explanatory video about how to do searches. So yes, we're going to post it on our website. So anyways, thanks to everyone, and thanks for your interest in Oil and Gas Watch, and have a great afternoon.